Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
Today, we're going to talk all things cardio. So any cardio myths you've heard, we're going to cover them. Does it kill your gains? The truth behind the fat burning zone, HIIT versus LISS cardio, and then why cardio actually matters more than obviously just for fat loss or for muscle growth. And then we're going to talk about how to program for cardio without compromising your recovery. So I guess the first thing to always talk about, Liam, is in terms of cardio, it's always got a stigma as good or bad. What would you say is it a net positive or a net negative overall?
It is always, I would say 90% of the time, a net positive.
For sure. And why is that?
Mainly because, well, you're going to get really strong when you're growing muscle, right? And some lifts require actually a cardiovascular system to perform these certain lifts.
Yep.
Yes, we have Pablo here for those watching on YouTube.
Yes, Pablo's here.
But let's say your legs and your quads and, well, they're part of your legs, but like legs, quads, adductors, all of that in a barbell back squat, you can get really strong on that. It will get to a point where you'll notice that your heart rate's skyrocketing on your working sets and you'll need to catch your breath in between. That could be a limiting factor whether or not you actually can increase the weight or not if you're out of breath. This is where your cardiovascular system comes into play when we're talking about muscle growth.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, probably a really big thing that people do miss is that they'll go, they might jump, like I said, in a barbell back squat, like it's quite a demanding exercise, right? So if you're doing maybe 5 reps, with a controlled tempo, you're probably going to get away with it. But it's like, if you've been programmed, 4 sets of 12 or something like that, it's like, you're going to be absolutely stuffed by the 3rd set and recovery is going to need to be, obviously higher, rest time's going to need to be higher as well. So I think that is one thing that a lot of people don't realize. They think they probably just need more rest time when a lot of the time they actually need to improve their cardiovascular capacity because, you should be able to do repeated bouts of weight training. Of course, there still needs to be rest there, but that's going to be more from a nervous system standpoint than a cardiovascular system standpoint.
Exactly. But I mean, if you train your cardiovascular system, everything else gets better. Your increase of oxygenation into your cells gets a lot better. Your nutrient partitioning gets better. Your energy levels get better. I would argue that your sleep gets better.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things, 100% going to make a big difference. So why do you think there's that sort of stigma that, probably comes from the bodybuilding community as well, or it did once upon a time? I think they're a lot smarter now, but why was it bad? Or, I guess, did people think it probably interfered with a lot of things in terms of muscle growth?
Well, think about it, right? If you run on the treadmill for 30 minutes and then you try and do a weight session, you're pre-fatigued. So people were like, well, shit, which one do I prioritize? And then it's like, well, of course I'm going to prioritize the weights first and everything like that. But then we found like, okay, now there's this hybrid athlete movement where people are doing run clubs and weightlifting, or people are doing, running in between, like CrossFit or F45. So like they'll incorporate cardio in with weights and, people are calling themselves hybrid athletes, or, I'm going to smash out all these Ks runs and then I'm going to lift weights in between. But then people are like, wait, how do I recover from all this? And this is where smart strategic programming comes into play. You don't want to go, I would say, above a zone 2 cardio on the days you're doing cardio unless you've got a specific goal for a specific event you're doing. So for people that don't know, we've got 5 different zones of cardio. It correlates to your BPM, so your beats per minute. And then zone 2 goes up to about 130 to 140, around that range. If you exceed that, then okay, there's a little bit more stress on the cardiovascular system, which will actually have more stress on the nervous system, which will require more recovery. So if you're doing too much in between, you won't be able to recover.
Yeah, and I think that sort of ties us in to our first sort of main topic, which is, the sort of fat burning zone and these fat burning systems and what we're trying to, accomplish there with sort of certain heart rates. And I think this becomes probably a big problem especially when it's coming to fat loss, is that, people will correlate, okay, fat loss equals cardio. I just need to move more, I need to burn more calories. And it's like, of course, that is definitely something that helps. But of course, then food becomes the other part of the equation, that whole calories in, calories out.
Yep.
But when it comes back to that fat burning zone, I think people don't realize that they probably need to be, it's not going to actually burn body fat off your body, so to speak. It is more a zone that generally uses fats as your main source of fuel. So it's like, imagine you're on the keto diet. It's sort of a similar thing, but at the same time, you're still going to lose the same amount of body fat. But then, of course, being in that zone is probably going to give you some sort of cardiovascular benefit, which could give you then some fat loss benefits, muscle growth, body recomposition down the track as well. So I just wanted to give a bit of a context around that sort of fat burning zone, because a lot of people think if I just do that every day, that's what's going to 100% guarantee me fat loss.
Well, a lot of people, when it comes to cardio, right, they notice the more output they do, the more their hunger hormones increase. So let's give an example, right? Let's say your daily step count target was 10 to 12,000 steps, just a rough estimate, right? Let's say you got that throughout the day through walking and movement, or let's say you only had time to do a huge cardio session in the morning and get your 12K steps in on like one intense session. Now, throughout the day of the person that did that intense session, they would be ravenous throughout the day because their body would be starving for some fuel back in the system. It's burnt through all the glycogen, all the fats, everything there. A huge energy depletion, electrolyte depletion. Whereas the person who did the exact same amount of movement but just didn't get that higher heart rate, still had like blood sugar regulations, still had probably a better baseline of a leptin and ghrelin receptors going on there, probably had better mood because they were less stressed. A huge different factor of things could be going into play there.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, and that's just based on, two, different types of cardio where, of course you're still walking, you're still doing enough, there's cardio, but if we're going into more of that, I guess higher intensity sort of cardio, which we'll get into next, I think that's something that a lot of people underestimate, how much fatigue and stress they're putting the body under, and then of course all the other areas of their life as well. If they're going and doing CrossFit 7 days a week or walking 20,000 steps, it's still going to be a strain on the body, on top of work, life, relationships, money, etc. So it's definitely something you need to look at, obviously, like we talk about from a holistic point of view, because otherwise then you're probably going to shoot yourself in the foot, and you actually, you won't know what's wrong, which pillar you need to fix out of, your health and fitness.
Yep. And it's interesting that you mentioned that with the steps, and someone's done like 20,000 steps in a day, right? Because I have noticed in clients, like anything over 14 to 16,000, like it can start to get a little bit of not only obsessiveness, because you just think the more steps I get in, the better. That actually does correlate to fatigue that needs to be mitigated. And a lot of people don't correlate that with either, some extra rest or extra 200 calories or something like that. And so they'll be in a deficit and they'll think, okay, I've doubled my step count today. But it's like, okay, you actually don't have the tools to recover there because you've done an additional, even though it was just movement, and you don't think it's going to impact all these other things. It could impact, say, a designated cardio session that you've got the next day. This is why I think for a lot of people, wearing some form of a heart rate tracker is a really good way not only to measure your cardiovascular system health, but your overall nervous system health. Because if you go and do, say, level 5 on the Stairmaster, and you can last ages while not seeing your heart rate increase rapidly, but then you go in one morning and you notice that it skyrockets really quick, that's a sign that you are under-recovered, or your nervous system is under a little bit more stress, or your cardiovascular system is under a bit more stress.
Yeah, I find that's really interesting. They call it your HRV, but your heart rate, just your sort of resting heart rate, is a really good indication. If you're under-recovered, it's like you're probably going to see that trend of you might start at 50 beats per minute. Within a couple of days, it's gone up to 54, 55. And, you see a normal trend and you go, oh, that's a bit weird. And that's probably a good sign that, again, you're under recovered, and then, you high potential of sickness and obviously not progressing, in terms of your body composition and fat loss or muscle growth goals, whatever they may be. Pablo's just going to make her way across.
She's trying to come
to
over
the next
here.
person.
Yep.
So we'll let her do that.
It's okay.
One thing I did want to talk about, guys, especially is the sort of high intensity interval training versus low intensity steady state. So we call it the HIIT versus LISS debate. And a lot of the, research has shown that a lot of the high intensity interval training, can be shown to be really good at burning, body fat in terms of that, brown fat and all that. So it is quite beneficial, but it needs to be used at the right time. So as an example, for a lot of my clients, a lot of them are pretty stressed. So it is something that I generally don't program too much. But then if there are clients that can handle it, I might add that in once a week or twice a week. But as a general rule, having a step goal, and then if they need it, obviously, if they're not recovering between their sets when we're doing our weight training, that's when I can program in some more, steady state cardio on the treadmill, 120 to 140 BPM. And I think that's going to be, your sort of golden egg in terms of, getting the most out of your cardio. But then you can also add in that high intensity interval stuff, to make sure we're just breaking down that brown fat, mitochondrial, all that sort of stuff. And that I think is going to make, it's still a big difference as well, but probably not as big of a difference as just having a good resting heart rate, a good cardiovascular
Yep.
capacity to begin with.
Would you say that golden egg there between the 120 to 140 BPM is purely from a recovery standpoint? So they're getting the work in that they need to stress the cardiovascular system, but they're not excessively stressing the cardiovascular system that they can't recover in between their workouts.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, that golden egg. It's like the Goldilocks zone of like you're recovered enough, but you're not pushing that recovery
Yep.
from a cardio perspective
Yep.
too much. And again, I probably should mention that this isn't like for a marathon runner or something like that. This is for your everyday weight trainer, who's looking to improve your body composition, looking to be a bit leaner, be a bit better. And obviously, marathon running goes into a whole different ballpark. Or if again, even high rocks and that sort of thing, it's you've just got to be a lot more careful with your recovery. You've got to be right on top of your food, right on top of your hydration, and of course, when you're doing your weight training, we really want to replenish those glycogen stores. But if we're doing like all this kind of crazy cardio, that's going to diminish them, and then again, you will find you will be under recovered when it comes to your weight training, and that's obviously going to have a negative impact on your body composition. So. Obviously, we talk about cardio, but it just goes into so many other areas. So I think it's important to note that.
I can give you an example. So one of my best mates is an Olympic athlete, marathon distance runner, Jack. I looked at his blood work. His testosterone was 3.
Yeah,
completely killed it. And he said he wasn't tired or he didn't have low libido. He didn't have the signs of low testosterone. But in terms of fertility markers, they had shot to shit.
It's really interesting how... And again, it comes from, when you're, I guess, one of the best in your sport or getting to that level, things are going to happen, right? Like, you're going to need those extra 1%ers and things like that. So I think there's always a trade-off when you get to that level of eliteness, but also there's a way to manage that as well. So
exactly.
There's best in the world. I remember, was it Djokovic? A bit of a side tangent, but he said he went full keto, vegan, didn't touch carbs basically.
Yeah.
And I remember he said he was in the 4th set of Wimbledon or something, and all of a sudden he just felt shot.
Yeah.
And he was just something just happened, and my body just switched off.
Yeah.
And I was like, you run out of glycogen,
now,
mate. You've got no carbohydrates.
Now guess what? Because I know his diet. Now I've looked into it. Now he eats bowl of fruit, honey, everything first thing in the morning, oatmeal to fuel his training sessions.
Yeah. It's quite funny.
Look, carbohydrates do have a sparing effect with lowering SHBG and distributing more free testosterone in the body. So eat your carbohydrates.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're metabolically healthy.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes
Which
under
the cardiovascular system helps you become.
Yeah. And like I said, it's it's like that thing of imagine you got 10 stones in front of you and you're trying to hit them all at once with one throw. It's you want to find what's the biggest area I'm struggling with, try and nail that, and then you'll find as a result all the other ones will improve slowly, and then you can start sort of knocking them off as you go. But again, that comes back to blood work as well. But a really good, what would you say a good metrics for resting heart rate? What's a good metric for that? What would you, I guess, like your clients to all be at as a minimum level of cardiovascular capacity?
Well, it really depends on the person, right? Because I think everyone's different in terms of genetics when it comes to actually predisposed heart conditions and stuff like that. Body weight comes into a huge play when it comes into your resting heart rate, not just stress. So, if you've got excessive body fat, your heart beats a lot harder. People that have a lot of muscle but are cardiovascular healthy and athletic, their resting heart rate's under the 50s. Yours and I's sitting here right now is pretty much under 50s. I know mine goes in the 40s. You probably saw my story yesterday. I was sitting down chilling. I did a Stairmaster session yesterday, and I was sitting down chilling on the couch playing Nintendo Switch, and my Apple Watch thought I had a sleep because I was that chill. My resting heart rate had just dropped, and my body had just pretty much said hey, our nervous system is just as chill as anything right now. It actually thought I was in a light sleep, which is a crazy metric, and it could be, false reading. But in terms of certain clients, right, I make sure we get at least 8K steps minimum, because I want them moving. And a lot of my guys, busy guys, business owners, all that stuff, they don't prioritize it. So it's just a really good metric to see how much they're moving throughout the day. And, all the things the lifting could be amazing, the diet could be everything, but then you look at the step count and they're what's the average for the week in their check-ins?
2,000.
And it's 4,000, 5,000. I'm this is why the scale weight is not moving, mate. We need to at least double that, or at least bump it up by 3,000 each day around there. So I would say for a baseline, I program at least 2 to 3 cardio sessions in between, because all my clients I program full body. I'm really huge on working sets and managing their volume, managing their stress, and in between I make sure they have cardio sessions that they actually enjoy, which is a huge thing, right? Because someone can go on the Stairmaster for 30 minutes, they could absolutely hate it, and someone can go on the bike for 30 minutes and absolutely love it. So you just got to find the right sort of source for the person. I don't program the assault bike. One that I personally love is swimming, but it's just really hard to get to a pool and just find a lane that's free and then do the amount of laps there, 30 minutes cardio. That's my preferred source of cardio, but also you got to make it work for yourself, right? So I do 3 Stairmaster sessions throughout the week, and I've just got YouTube Premium, and I just download a video or whatever for half an hour, and I just put it there while I'm doing my steady state. And I always do nose breathing. I program that with my clients as well. I know you do with the nasal strips. Make sure you're breathing through the nose, because it does train the cardiovascular system and the lungs. Works them a little bit harder to uptake the oxygen, works your diaphragm a little bit better as well, and also just gets you used to nose breathing, which we should be doing all the time. That's a side tangent for another day with all the health benefits there. But in terms of that, yeah, I find it works well for me. And what works well for my clients as well is they find their source. Some of them don't even do those cardio sessions. They just take the dog for a walk, or they make sure if they have a Zoom meeting or whatever, it's like, how can I do this with movement? Little things like that.
Yeah, I think it just goes, like you said, it just goes back to movement and just doing something. Like, you know, depending on where the person is and where they want to get to, obviously there's going to be a way to get there. But, you know, our job as coaches is to also find a way to, you know, get them to half enjoy it. You know, nothing's going to be always enjoyable, but, you know, if they can find an activity they enjoy, maybe it's a social sport, like I said, maybe it's taking the dog for a walk, maybe they do like to smash themselves on the Stairmaster for half an hour and they enjoy it. So
some do.
Exactly, and it's finding to, I guess, bring up to a certain level. So for example, I never did too much like higher intensity cardio, and now my coach is starting to program that in as we're sort of adding more calories back after a cut. Because he wants me to, you know, just start to recover a bit better and get those health metrics, you know, right up there. Not that I'm unfit, but it's always, you know, if you don't use it, you lose it sort of thing.
Interesting you mentioned recover a bit better there, because cardio does correlate into recovering better.
Yeah.
It makes the nervous system more efficient. It makes nutrient partitioning more efficient.
Yeah, and I think if people, it's hard because it's like, again, you've got the swings of the pendulum as always. You've got the people who do too much cardio and they run themselves in the ground. People who do too little, they don't get an adaptation from it and they go, oh, it does nothing. It's not working. Like, what's the point? So, you know, it's always something somewhere in the middle. And again, you know, if you've been a client of mine, you'll know that, you know, a lot of the time I'm pretty big on steps just because it's an easier way to get things in. But if you can't get your steps in, I will then be like, okay, we need you to jump on the treadmill, you know, half an hour after your session if you can. We'll always work within time constraints, but those sort of things are going to, you know, add up a big difference, not only to fat loss, muscle growth, but just overall health, you know, pumping blood and oxygen around the body faster and just making you healthier overall.
We're designed to move. It's as simple as that. The human body's designed to move. There was a term, I can't remember who said it, if it was a movie or it was some like, you know, one of those Hippocrates or something, but it just said movement is life. Something as so simple as that, just 3 words, movement is life.
Yeah.
And I really do think it's true.
Yeah, and especially if people, like I said, office jobs, like if you're clearing 2,000 steps a day, it's like, we're not expecting you to hit 10K, right? Like, I'm not saying, oh, you have to go in, you have to get an hour before you work, an hour after. It's like, but you just need to add in some more movement throughout the day. So, you know, it's the simple stuff of like, you know, take the stairs instead of the lift, park a bit further away from the train station or your work, you know, take the dog for a quick 15 minutes, you know, if you can get up in the morning, see some sunlight and get a quick 15, 30 minutes in, even if that's in the gym, you know, just something really simple to get you up, get you moving first thing in the morning. And I feel like, you know, I'm sure there's studies on it, but, you know, doing some sort of cardio first thing in the morning, we won't go into the fasted cardio type debate, but I'm sure that's going to give you some, you know, strong positive effects as well, not only to your body composition and your cardiovascular capacity, but your health overall.
I mean, some people swear by the fasted cardio thing. They like that the way it makes them feel, because then, you know, they don't have so much food in their system, they don't feel sluggish or anything, they actually feel like they can move like that freely. Some people, they don't feel like doing cardio after they've had a big meal.
Yeah, and it's completely fine either way. Like I said, if you're someone who, you know, that's the only time you can get it in, awesome. If you want to do it any other time of the day, that's fine as well. It's like, you've just got to know, you know, unless there's a very, very specific reason that your coach might program that for, you know, for some really advanced reason, probably based on blood work or something like that as well. There's no need to, you know, major in the minors. You know, if you've got someone who's like, you need to hit, you know, an hour before, an hour after, or you have someone else who's like, just hit 8,000 steps and get your heart rate up twice a week or something like that. Everyone's going to be different, but those are some really good metrics. You know, like I said, 8K, I like that as a really good metric. If you're an office worker, even if you get 6 and then just do a few more on the weekends, even better. Or again, being an office worker, add another cardio session and you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's other ways to sort of hack this as well. So I'll give you 2. One of them is nutrient partitioning after meals, like digestive walks. For every meal you have, say if you eat 4 meals a day, just go for a 10-minute walk after and you've got 40 minutes worth of walking. And that's, usually around 4,000 to 5,000 steps throughout the day, just from digesting your food. So not only will you be more insulin sensitive and your nutrient partitioning will be a lot better, your digestion will obviously be a lot better because you need movement, then why not do that? The other one is sauna as well, because you're in a sedentary state, right? But you're accumulating a stress on the body, a heat stress, and your heart rate is going into that 130 to 140 zone, depending how hot it is. But you're still stressing the cardiovascular system a little bit when you're sitting in a sauna, even though it's as relaxing as it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I literally just did that before and it was funny that, like, I always notice it, like, it's gotten a lot better. The first time I jumped in a sauna, I felt like, oh my God, I couldn't breathe. But now I'm just so relaxed in there where it's like, I know my heart rate's going up, but like nowhere near as much as it used to. And that's generally going to be a great sign that my cardiovascular capacity has improved, not only from the sauna, but just doing more walking, more cardio and those type of things.
There's an adaptation period that happens, right? You stress the body, it adapts, it gets stronger, and then you need to stress it again. But there's certain ways you can program, and this is where coaching comes into play. I mean, it took me 11 years to pretty much figure out my recovery capacity in my body. I used to think like I could train legs and then go for a run the next day. No, I can't. It beats the shit out of my body and my legs take a week to recover. But if I do steady state cardio on a Stairmaster in between certain full body days where I'm only doing 2 working sets of legs, all of a sudden I can recover in between. I'm like, why did it take me 11 years to figure this shit out?
Yeah, that's why it takes us so long
to
figure everything out. And that's why we're both here, you know, giving you guys the information we can. Anything else? I think we've covered just about everything.
Yeah, we've pretty much covered everything. I will say resting heart rate really just helps with sleep. You want it as low as possible before you get to bed, and because our heart rate drops obviously as we sleep. And just a tracking device can be really good for that stuff. Not a shameless plug or anything. I'm not associated with anything, but if you want to go for like an Apple Watch or a Whoop band, what's that ring that you just bought?
Not Oura Ring. What's it? A QR ring.
QR ring.
Like the cheap ones, like the Kogan brand.
The Temu.
Yeah, 140 bucks, and they work really well.
That's the thing, right? Like these things are just a really it's an initial investment, right? Because it's a substantial amount of money for some people, but the data that you get is so valuable. Like the amount of health data and metrics I've gotten, and I've been able to be like, what's this here, and sort of play around with it, has been absolutely amazing with not only a sleep tracker, but mainly the heart rate tracker, because I can even tell, right, how I've actually recovered in between working sets in the gym, because yes, it's not 2 minutes. Usually I have a timer, but I'm like, my resting, it's not a resting heart rate, but my heart rate's dropped below 100. So I should be good to go by now. You know, you do your working set, weighted chin-ups, it goes to 160. You're huffing and puffing a little bit, but then you're like, hang on, I'm actually got a metric telling me, even though I don't feel like I'm recovered, my body's telling me, hey, you're good to go. And this is where data can sort of get us out of our own heads.
Yeah, I think, like I said, just to finish off, that's pretty important to just track some sort of cardio and just see, you know, the effect that's having on your body composition. So whether that's, like I said, using your Apple Health app with your Apple Watch, you know, whether it's getting a little ring, whether it's, you know, getting a pedometer to check the amount of steps you can do, I think those things are really important. And one thing I have found in terms of just like going back to the nasal breathing, whilst Pablo doesn't jump off the couch, is the sorry, what are they called? The
nasal strips.
Nasal strips.
Yep.
Well, who are they from again? Geez, I've lost the plot.
Aren't they your sponsor?
My sponsor, yeah, Breathe Ease, sorry.
Yeah.
So the Breathe Ease nasal strips. So if you do want some, you can use the code AFN15, I think it is. But you can DM me if that doesn't work. Let me know. But they're really good for at night. Really helps you obviously breathe into your stomach and bring into your nose, which is obviously going to help promote recovery as well. And obviously that's going to help your cardiovascular system too. So there's your shameless little plug. But until next time, guys, I think that's everything we've covered. I hope you've got heaps of useful information out of cardio. But until next time, we'll see you in the next podcast.
Thanks, guys.